Who is the most famous person you've spoken to? Robin Williams. I was at Disneyland for the first time. I was like 4, and I was there with my mom and her friend. As we were getting on the Indiana Jones ride, I got in the front behind the steering wheel and my mom sat next to me. Robin Williams cuts my mom's friend and sits behind me and puts a hand on my shoulder and leans over and asks me, "Do you know how to drive this thing?" I didn't know who he was at the time. My mom told me when I was older. Michael Jackson. When I was little in the 80s, my family lived in LA and I took dance classes at the same studio as Nicole Richie. One day her dad Lionel showed up to pick her up from class with his friend Michael. He looked exactly like he did on TV at the time, with the military-style jacket with a bunch of glittery stuff on it, etc. I was too awestruck to say anything except hello. He was very quiet and polite. Does a finger gun and a mouth click count from Danny DeVito on opposite moving sidewalks at LAX in the 90s count? I talked to Nicolas Cage at a beach resort a decade ago. It was hard to notice him as he was in casual wear and didn't really stick out. That dude's pretty famous, right? Also met Notch, who made Minecraft. Talked to him and some guys from Mojang for a good bit. Lady Gaga. Served her a drink at a Halloween party in a nightclub once when I was bartending. Great smile, very friendly, and a lot shorter in person than I would have thought. 10 out of 10 would serve her a drink again. Not sure if this counts, but Charles Schulz, the creator of the Peanuts comics, was a big idol of mine when I was in middle and high school, and I was obsessed with his work after doing a huge research project about his life. When I was 16, I was in a production of the musical * You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown *, and right before the performance, they announced that Schultz's daughter, Amy, was in the audience, along with 3 of his grandkids and his first, and only at the time, great-grandson. I was freaking out at the idea that I was about to perform a musical for the Schultz estate as one of his beloved characters. Right after the show, I went out to meet them in the audience and expressed how much I admired Amy's father and the impact he had on my life. She was amazed because she didn't think people my age cared much about his work, and thought that his legacy had really only lingered with older generations. But here I was saying I knew everything about his life and work and was honored to meet them. At the end of our conversation, she asked for my mailing address so she could send me some autographed books and other merch. It was one of the coolest experiences of my life. Paul Rudd. At a convention, I gave him a cupcake. I'd like to think he ate it. Late edit. Here the picture and the cupcake in question: https://www.reddit.com/r/marble studio/comment/b535z/I_got_a_paul_medium=android_app and udm_source=share. Guy Fieri. I was drunk, bar hopping, it's like 10 p.m. and I am walking along to the next bar. And I am like, that guy looks like Guy Fieri. He's walking towards me, so as we pass, I give him a second look and I am like, that guy actually really does look like Guy Fieri. So I pass him, and a second later I decide, there is no way that guy isn't Guy Fieri. So I turn around and shout, "Hey, you're Guy Fieri," and he turns around and he's like, "Yeah." And I respond, "That's cool." Then I turn back and continue to where I was going because I realized I didn't really have anything more to say to him other than that. He was by himself too. No entourage, no crowd. Nothing. I guess he might have been scouting out food spots in the area or something. Conan O'Brien. I worked at Dodger Stadium selling beer for the 2018 World Series. He calls me over and bought a couple of beers. Looked at him and said, "Well, I guess I don't need to check your ID." He said, "That's sweet," and chuckled. He tipped me $10 too. Christian Slater. I served him coffee. I worked at an airport coffee shop, and we talked about skiing and Star Trek lol. Jason Statham. Went to cut a tree down at his London house. He yelled at us to be careful dragging branches down the side of his newly painted fence. To be fair, he had a point. B.B. King. He was playing a gig at my college and I was on my way to teach racquetball. He got out of a very nondescript Lincoln, and then grabbed Lucille from the back seat. I waved, "Have a good show tonight, Mr. King." He replied, Thank you, son, I surely will. Middle of the afternoon, between classes, just he and I. My wife took my son to a local Comic-Con 6 years ago while I had to work. Struck up a conversation about the weather with a nice older gentleman. 2 days later she hears his voice on TV and says that guy sounds exactly like him. Proceeded to show her his picture and confirm she chatted about the weather with Batman, Adam West. I met Nathan Fillion at a convention in Florida about 17 years back. When it was my turn to have him sign a picture, I told him that his Mandarin was the best in Firefly. That I could understand every word he said. He looked really happy and he signed my picture with, "Thanks for coaching me in Chinese." Such a cool guy to meet. Steve-O or Mitt Romney. Kinda hitting both sides of the spectrum. I was in high school with Jared Leto. I spoke to him a few times and every time he acted like a bully. I would describe him as an asshat. I met the actor that played McLovin from Superbad at ACL one year. Saw him at the bar and offered to buy him a drink. I was 22 and a woman, so it seemed like I was hitting on him a little. It worked as a Jedi mind trick because he realized he was rich and famous and should buy my drink instead. Then we went on our separate ways. Nice guy, obviously. Amy Lee from Evanescence. I was working first aid at a gig and she came out after the show and started chatting to us while we were waiting for the venue to empty out and get the all clear to pack up our post. She was genuinely shocked to learn I was only 15 or 16 and gave me a hug, for all my work helping their fans. My parents' claim to fame was Prince Andrew, but for some reason they don't really talk about it now. This doesn't really count 'cause I was a baby, but Matthew Broderick held me. I was in a movie called Election, and I had a few scenes in it. Man, I wish I was old enough to remember any of it, but my whole life my parents have told me about it and how nice Matthew was. Met LeVar Burton when I was a little kid, and he was hosting Reading Rainbow. He told me to keep reading. I promised him I would. Ultimately I got older and began to hate reading. I've let LeVar Burton down. It's my personal shame. I spoke with Bill Murray and his 4 or 5 boys, can't remember. I took their order when I worked at In-N-Out Burger. He was still the coolest dude in person. When they left after eating, he turned towards me and gave me a sort of salute wave. George Carlin. This was over a decade ago when he did a performance at the River Rock Casino in Richmond, BC. I saw him outside, said hi and told him I was a big fan in my broken English. He smiled, nodded and grunted like the old fuck he was and went back inside the building. He died 8 months later and the world needs him more than ever. Mike Tyson. When I was about 8 years old, and my neighbor, friend came to my house and told my family that Mike Tyson was coming over to buy pigeons from her father. I guess he is an avid pigeon collector. Being such a random and outrageous claim, we didn't believe her, but sure enough about an hour later he shows up with his entourage in about 20 cars to buy some pigeons. The only thing I had with me was a soccer ball, so he signed it for me and I still have it to this day. I met David Hasselhoff outside of a Whole Foods. He was wearing a shirt that said, "Don't hassle the Hoff." I said hi to him, he came up to me. He is extremely tall, put his huge arms around me and gave me a hug and said that he loves the gays. I was wearing a gay pride shirt. He also has the bluest eyes I've ever seen. Like piercing blue. George Clooney. I pissed him off by telling him he was great as Batman. He did not like that. I spoke to Jason Momoa at a convention. My wife is a huge fan and told me how the dude throws axes and drinks Guinness. He didn't say much during the photo opportunity, but afterwards I asked him if he was going to hit up one of the axe-throwing bars nearby. His face lit up and he said, "I don't have the time during this trip, but thanks for the heads up, brother." He then gave me a fist bump. My wife was quite jealous. Edit. A word. Gordon Ramsay told me to fuck off after I said I preferred Jamie Oliver. In 1999 I met the whole Smash Mouth band. I was staying the summer with my aunt in Michigan. The neighbor's kid saw them at a bait and tackle shop and her dad invited them back to their house to fish. There was a tour bus parked in the neighbor's driveway all weekend. Steve refused to sign autographs, but the rest of the band did and showed us the tour bus. I remember one of the band members had a Nickelodeon photo blaster camera he took pictures with. Steve also ran my cousin's boat into a sandbar and jumped in the lake fully clothed to push it off of it. My parents live in a lost place in the province of Quebec. Years ago, my mom and my dad met Channing Tatum and his wife in a trail during their morning walk. They greet everyone they see, but they just realized after it was him. Very uncommon to meet popular people there. It's the kind of place where everyone know everyone. I made a ham sandwich for Larry Bird, twice. Mayo, mustard or hot peppers, Mr. Bird. Edit 1. I also thought the people of Reddit would like to know that the second time I made him a sandwich, he asked to take a picture with me. My boss asked him to send the picture to her work email so we could print it out and put it on the wall, but Larry dropped the ball on that one. John Cleese bumped into him in Harrods Pet Department, when that still existed. He was buying an expensive cat which he let my girlfriend and I hold and play with. Didn't realize who it was until afterwards, and I saw him again from a distance and realized why he looked familiar. I'm kind of glad, as we had a nice normal interaction which I probably would have made awkwardness I known. I was raised on Monday Python and Faulty Towers. Stan Lee. Met him at Comic-Con and the line to meet him got delayed because he took a nap. Shaq. Twice. Both at Universal Studios. Once when I was on vacation there when I was 14, and then again when I lived in Orlando and I was 28. Very nice dude both times. He must love Universal Studios as much as me. Edit. Shaq may be the most globally famous person I've met, but the most famous to me and more meaningful to me was Monty from the Stone Roses. Met him in a kebab shop in Stockport. Was super fucking cool and shared a joint with me in a park while we ate our kebabs. Top fucking bloke. Carrie Fisher. I was wearing a red Darth Vader shirt that said, "Choking Hazard," and she laughed when she saw it, and said, "I love your shirt." I was trying not to gush, and asked her if I could pet her dog Gary. We chatted for a few, mostly about Gary. She was super warm, and funny. It felt almost like talking to a sister rather than a film star. Not to brag, but when I was a kid I met Santa Claus at the mall. Edit. I see I have gold. Pretty new to attention like this, so I am assuming it's customary to say thanks? Emma Watson. I worked at a store on Thayer Street in Providence, Rhode Island when she went to Brown. I also worked on the same street at my cousin's pizza place that she loved. So I literally would see and talk to her multiple times a week. Super nice, quiet and polite. This was also the time where she would have a male friend go out with her and speak for her. BC, as soon as she opened her mouth you knew it was Hermione Granger from a mile away. Steve Irwin. I used to work for him at his zoo before he passed. He was super nice, more mellow than what you see on TV, but just as passionate about his work. I met Simon Pegg when I was working as a cashier at Borders, and I love to share this story because he was such a nice and funny guy. It was like a Tuesday in the afternoon and the place was empty. He came up to me with some stationery and I started ringing him up. The entire time I was thinking he looked so much like him, but I didn't think it was him since I wasn't in the UK, and as far as I knew he wasn't filming a movie in Chicago, so it was a pretty quiet transaction. After it was done and I was handing him his bag with his stuff, I jokingly said, "Has anyone told you that you look like the guy from Shaun of the Dead?" He replied, "I am the guy from Shaun of the Dead." I worked a small dinner party, 12 people, where I served dinner to Jimmy Carter. He and his wife were on their way home from a trip to China and he stopped in Washington State for a fundraising dinner, but she continued on to Georgia. He took a break between dinner and dessert to call Rosalind to make sure she made it home safely and say good night. After dessert he came back to the kitchen to thank the chef and myself. He was just the nicest guy. Met Linus from Linus Tech Tips in a subway. Does that count? I've met Cristiano Ronaldo. I barely spoke to him, but I coexisted with him. It was my son's Make-A-Wish about 6 years ago. This doesn't answer your question but makes me laugh. So my parents are both retired. My dad specifically hates modern culture. By modern, I mean anything post-1970. Anyway, so my dad and mom are at an old Hollywood theater during the day on a weekday, and on the way out my mom stops in the bathroom. Dad waiting outside. My dad sees a brood of kids run by into the bathrooms and a woman, their mother, he described as absolutely striking and obviously of decent wealth. Her clothes looked expensive. They started chit-chatting while she waited for her kids. Nothing out of the ordinary. My mom comes out of the bathroom and stops dead in her tracks when she sees the woman my dad is speaking to. While recounting this story, she goes, "Dad's name. Tell fucking fabulous who it was. Angeline Jolie. Yes, Angeline. Not Angelina." He had no idea who she was or who he was talking to. A world-famous actress. Tears of joy, tears of joy. I bet she got a kick out of that. Method Man once told me to go fuck myself in the SLC airport. I then sat next to him on the flight. It was a very one-sided conversation based on a misunderstanding. Edit. A bunch of people were lining up for pictures and he had a whole group with him including Redman. Plane was going to Vegas. Canelo fight was that weekend, anyways. After a bit he's done with pictures and his people kinda tell everyone to chill. This whole time I'm just sitting close by, not trying to get pictures, as I was there before he showed up. I like Method, but what am I going to do with a selfie with Method? Frame it and put it on my nightstand. Anyways, some dude gets butthurt and shouts, "Fuck you, Meth," as he's walking away behind my seat. So Method looks over and thinks it's me and tells me to fuck myself as his group glared at me. We both had a seat in the same row in first class and dude was on the window, I was aisle. He boarded first and was asleep before I even sat down, so never had any further issues. It wasn't me. Method Man. Kevin Bacon. Didn't recognize it was him. Politely asked if his flight companion was Kira Sedgwick, whom I recognized, SMH. His expression was of mild surprise, which then made me realize I was missing something. Tears of joy. I was seeing a Broadway show with my mom in 1992. At intermission she found me in the downstairs lobby and excitedly said, "I just saw Meryl Streep in the bathroom." I said, "Please tell me you didn't say anything to her and you just left her alone." She said, "I was very good, and didn't say anything. Look, here she comes now." And I said, "I'm glad you didn't say anything to her. Because that's Glenn Close." Neil Armstrong. I was at the NASA Museum at Cape Canaveral, British tourist, but I also happened to be a teacher. They have an educators only section, where teachers etc. can go and get loads of freebies for use in school. Whilst there, Neil Armstrong came in with his grandchildren and began greeting and chatting with people at random, including me. He was pleased to meet a British teacher of STEM and was a lovely bloke. Everyone, including me, was in awe. Back around 2014-2015, Peter Mayhew said he liked my Han Solo costume. I'll always remember that. Thanks for watching. See you later.